Big episode this week, Joe. Episode 40 of Glass of Joe, if you can believe it. First episode of March, which means March Madness is a couple weeks away. Got Selection Sunday about a week away. Just me and you this week. No guest, unfortunately. It wasn't for a lack of trying. We were trying to get a college basketball-related guest.
If you see our DMs on Twitter and Instagram and our emails that we've sent, we tried this week, but we're realizing the opposite of what things were like last May. And it's almost been a year since we started this, which is crazy to believe, but it's the opposite now. Back then, nobody had anything to do. We weren't working. And everything we sent out was like, sure, I got nothing else to do.
Right.
Now it's, we're realizing we have a tight schedule because we're working again and people are actually busy. So it's not as easy. We have some things laid out after this week, but this week was tough. So it's just us. But to repay that, we decided this would be the best possible week to go ahead and give our 2021 MLB preview, because we know things are going to get crazy the next couple of weeks with all college basketball, our guests, March Madness. So there's no better time than this one, episode 40, big episode, go big with the MLB season preview.
Absolutely. And, we've talked a little bit of baseball. Our last guest, Grant Paulson, was on and kind of started to dive into that. We've started talking spring training a little bit, but now we can really get into it with certain teams. And as we did when we were previewing baseball last season, which is crazy that this is our second preview show for baseball. But we'll just go through the division real quick, the playoff teams, and then get into some of the awards. We'll start with the AL East. I don't think there's going to be much disagreement there. It was the Yankees last year. It's going to be the Yankees again this year. The best team in the American League, the best team in the American League East. And maybe the Blue Jays can give them trouble. The Orioles won't. The Red Sox won't. Tampa just lost too many stars, especially in their pitching staff. Their lineup should still be solid, but not good enough to beat the Yankees in the East Division.
I mean, if you take a step back, and we've talked about this obviously off the air, the leagues have flipped this year. Last year, the NL was, and again, it was a shortened season, but I'm not talking about the preview of the sprint that last year was. I'm talking, think back to last March when we were previewing what was supposed to be a 162 game season. Everybody thought that in the NL, it was the Dodgers and then everybody else. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought that the AL was going to be just brutal, and it was. This year, it's flipped. This year, the AL, it's the Yankees and everybody else. And the NL, it's going to be a free-for-all where there's going to be a couple good teams on the outside of the playoffs looking in. And yes, the teams that are in it are all really – I mean, you could – when we get to who we think is in, I could look at all 5 of the teams that I'm picking to get in and make a very valid case for all 5 of them to win the World Series without even batting an eye. So they've totally flipped this year. And with that being said, yeah, the Yankees, sure, the pitching staff is seemingly always a question for them. Aaron Boone, first of all, hopefully he's all right. I know he's had heart issues in the past, open heart surgery, I guess a decade or so ago now. He's taken a few days leave from the team to get a pacemaker put in, but he said he should be back within a week. And then back to their lineup. I mean, look, they have an elite lineup. Their rotation could struggle. They've got guys in there like Davy Garcia. We'll see what Luis Severino, what he is when he comes back. Off-field issues aside, Domingo Germán, they welcomed him back. They're going to give him another shot. He could be a top pitcher. So Masahiro Tanaka's back in Japan. There's a lot of questions in their rotation. The one question that we don't have about their rotation is Garrett Cole at the top of it. And the bullpen last year kind of was their Achilles heel as well, even though before that it used to be their strength where they'd do bullpen days and get in their bullpen in the 6th inning and not bat an eye. So there are weaknesses there, but their bats get them out of everything because that lineup is ridiculous. And yeah, they're far and away the best team in the AL, despite the weaknesses they have. They're not as sound of a team as the Dodgers, but like we said, they will benefit from being head and shoulders above everybody else in the American League.
Yep, and I agree with everything you said. AL Central is probably a 2-horse race between the Twins and the White Sox. The White Sox are picking up a lot of steam. All their young talent that they've gotten some free agent acquisitions. Tony La Russa comes in to become the manager. I still like Minnesota, though. Minnesota's been a solid regular season team, at least for the past 2 or 3 seasons. It seems like they have figured out how to navigate the regular season. They still got a good pitching staff. They still have good hitting. Just a good roster, with a lot of utility guys they can plug and play every day. So I still like Minnesota. Chicago's going to be a good team, but I'm still putting my money on the Twins to win the Central.
I am buying the hype of the White Sox. I do think, look, they've got the reigning MVP winner in Jose Abreu. You go through their lineup, they have a ton of talent, especially young talent guys like Madrigal, who you think are going to make the jump. Anderson at shortstop. They have a ton of talent. The rotation for them as well on the uptick. La Russa's the wild card in this. I mean, Renteria was just manager of the year in the AL, and they canned him for La Russa. I don't know what that's going to bring. The Twins, I feel like, are due for maybe a little bit of a pullback, but that's not to say that they're not going to be a top contender again. I mean, it's a team that is quietly under the radar, consistently won more than or
100
near 100 games,
Yeah.
and people forget about that. So it's going to be a tight race. I don't want to fall into the hype of the White Sox, but I am, because I do think they have that necessary talent. I'm going to go with the slight edge to the White Sox, but I don't feel very confident in it. Like, of all the divisions we're going to go through, this is probably the hardest the hardest two-horse race to pick. The hardest division, and we'll get to that, I would say, is going to be the NL East. But this is the hardest two-horse race to pick. I don't really know what's going to be the deciding factor, other than to say who can beat up on the bad teams the most, because you look at the rest of that division, and there are a ton of wins to be had there against the Royals and the Tigers and the Indians. So when it comes to the White Sox and the Twins, they're probably, for the most part, going to split when they're playing against each other throughout the course of the year. That'll even out who is going to beat up on those bad teams the most. And that's why we see the Twins lately having 100+ win seasons, is because they're taking care of the Tigers and they're taking care of the Royals. So if you could take care of those teams, you're going to win this division. And obviously, again, we're back to a 162 game season where you're playing a normal schedule again, not like last year where it was just regionalized. So they are going to play the whole league again, but you're still obviously playing against the teams in your division way more than anybody else. So take care of the Royals, take care of the Tigers, and the Indians to a lesser extent, because they're not as bad as those other two teams. Take care of them, and you're going to win this division.
And look, AL West for me was the toughest division in the AL to figure out. I bet against the A's every single year, and every single year Bob Melvin in Oakland makes me look stupid. But they lost Marcus Semien, and that was a really big piece to that lineup, and I think that's going to hurt them. I wanted to pick the Angels just because of how much
Me
you and
too.
I love Trout, and they've made some nice acquisitions on the pitching staff, and Rendon's going to be healthy for this whole year.
Shohei Ohtani back as well.
Ohtani, Pujols' last season, you wonder if maybe they got a little juju on their side. Maybe he can ride out into the sunset with an AL West title and they can make a run in the playoffs. But even though they lost Springer, Joe, even though they lost Garrett Cole last year, Verlander's coming off surgery, or they lost Cole 2 years ago, I still like the Astros to win this division. I mean, Bregman, I know Altuve struggled, but he's still a good hitter. They got Alvarez, Gurriel. There's too much talent in that lineup. Verlander's got a rubber arm. He'll be fine. They got McCullers coming and backing him up. So the Astros, now that the whole cheating thing has kind of died down a little bit, they're still going to get booed because fans weren't in the stadium last year, and they're going to let them have it. But at least they're used to all that stuff now. And in the midst of a 162 game season, they still have the best roster in the division. And I think they end up winning it. The reason it could be a tricky division, though, is Seattle hasn't made the postseason in 20 years. And I don't think this will be the year that they do. But I mean, time's on their side. Like, eventually one of these years, Seattle will put it together. They've had some nice starts to season, but they just fall off a cliff in July and August. So maybe this will be the year for the Mariners, but to me, it's a two-horse race between the Astros and the Angels, but I think the Astros win the AL West.
The two teams I'm discounting immediately are the Mariners and the Rangers. Rangers, I think, are going to be in the basement here, and the Mariners, like you said, don't think they'll make it, but they'll be more competitive, and we saw that last year. They had a lot of games last year where they beat some of the top teams in the division. We've seen in the past, not last year, but the year before they went on that historic losing streak, they started the season really hot out of the gates. They have a lot of great young talent. Unanimous Rookie of the Year winner last year. They have Jared Kelenic probably coming up early this year. So I think they will make more noise than people realize. But again, same thing for me. It comes down to the other 3 teams in the division. I think it's more of a 3-horse race than a 2-horse race because for all the times that we discount the A's, we see what they do time and time again. So I think they'll be right in the thick of things, probably hovering around 90 wins. I think of all the divisions, this one might have the division winner with the fewest wins, even, NL or AL. I think this division will have the division winner with the fewest wins.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the Astros win it with maybe like a 92 win total, something like that. And again, the A's usually hover around 90. The Angels could have better pitching than people realize with Bundy and Haney leading the way and some other pieces in there. Again, in that lineup with the best player on the planet and Mike Trout and another MVP and Rendon and beyond that. And Pujols has been making headlines the last few days because people are trying to figure out if he's like 3 years older than he actually says he is. And apparently there's some credence to that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I could see them certainly, it wouldn't, put it this way, any of these 3 teams, any of the 3 A's in this division, Astros, Angels, A's, not surprising me if any of them win it. I'd probably say the Astros coming around 92, the A's coming around 89, the Angels coming around 87. It's a tight September race, and the Astros come out on top.
Now, remind me, for the wild card, are there 4 spots or is it just 2 again?
So, yeah, the MLB screwed us on this last year because we did our whole preview episode, and then on the day of opening day, they changed it, like before the first pitch. So I've been trying to read up on it. For right now, we're recording this at 11:18 and 27 seconds on March 4th. It is not expanded postseason. But like last year, people are saying do not count that out until April 1st and the season starts because they are very liable to change it on the eve of the season.
What we'll do, we'll give the top 2 teams and then we'll give the 2 more.
I'm just going to say, as of now, 5 teams we're picking, but we'll give the other 3 as well, just in case.
Yeah. All right. So my top 2, if it just stays a normal format with your 2 wild card, I like the White Sox to make the playoffs, a lot of talent. And then I told you the Blue Jays, for me, I like them a lot this year. I mentioned Marcus Semien left Oakland. He goes to Toronto to go along with Springer and all that young talent that they have with Vladdy Jr. and Bo Bichette. Their lineup's really, really good. The pitching is the question for the Blue Jays, but sometimes when you just have a lineup that's so good, like the White Sox did last year, the pitching kind of falls into place. And I think that happens for the Blue Jays this year. You mentioned how the Twins and the White Sox get to get a lot of wins against the bottom feeders in the Central. I look at the Blue Jays the same way. Other than the Yankees, you can get a lot of wins against the Red Sox, the Orioles. So I think they make the playoffs. And then the other teams, if it does expand, I'd put the Angels in there, and I'm going to say Tampa slides in there. I know they lost Morton and they lost Snell.
8,
One more,
right?
too?
Is it 8?
8, yeah. It's 8. So, 8 total. So just 4 wild card teams, and Tampa's pitching staff, Wander Franco, if you don't know the name yet, learn it because he will be the next star for the Rays. And the Rays just find guys everywhere. I know Kevin Cash had an absolute blunder in the World Series last year, but he's still one of the best managers in baseball. And I think the AL East gets 3 teams into the playoffs if the playoffs do expand back to 8.
You still only gave me 7 teams. You gave me 3 division winners and 4 wild cards.
That's right. 5
wild cards.
That's right. So let's see. The 5th wild card team then would be, let me think. I guess Oakland, if I had to pick a 5th, would be Oakland.
If we're going normal format, which I think it'll end up being, I think they're going to do the smart thing and keep it 3 division winners, 2 wild cards, back to the old way. If that's the case, I'm going Yankees 1, going White Sox 2, Astros 3, Blue Jays, Twins 4 and 5 as the wild cards. Here's my kicker. I think Toronto and Minnesota both have more wins than the Astros, just like a separate side tidbit, just to kind of show the strength of those wild card teams. I think they both have more wins than the Astros. And going back to what I said, that will be the division winner that has the fewest wins of any division. So go with those 5. If it's expanded, I'm putting all 3 of those AL West teams in there for, again, like I said, for that division not having the winner for having the division winner that has the fewest wins. There we go. I got that out right. There's going to be 3 there, and I think they all get in the wild card. And then my last wild card team here, like you were having trouble thinking of, kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. I'm tempted to probably say that the Rays probably get it. I'm going 3 AL West teams, probably going 3 AL East teams as well, and then the Twins and the White Sox from the Central. I think the Red Sox will be people.
Teams.
Yeah, I think the Red Sox will be better than people realize this year, especially getting Alex Cora back. But I don't think they get into any conversations. And the only reason they get into any conversation is if it's an 8-team playoff. And again, I fully anticipate it being a 5-team playoff like it should be. And there's no reason to expand it this year if you're having a 162-game season. Now, beyond that, your wild card game's a toss-up. I will say that whoever wins that wild card game between the Blue Jays and the Twins for me, if it's the Blue Jays or the Twins, doesn't matter. Astros beat them. They have that postseason experience. And if they have less wins than those teams in the regular season, again, it's because their division's a lot tighter and they can't beat up on bottom feeders in the way that the Blue Jays and the Twins can. So I've got the Astros once again in the ALCS. I've got the Yankees in the ALCS, and I've got the Yankees making the World Series. We've been talking about the Yankees making the World Series now for like 3 or 4 years, and they keep falling short. This has to be almost like the Dodgers last year, where they were clearly the best team and you knew it was coming at some point. I think this has to finally be the year for the Yankees. I don't see any way it's not. So yeah, the Yankees beat whoever wins. Excuse me, I said the Astros beat whoever's the wild card. The Yankees beat whoever's the wild card. The White Sox and the Astros. I think the Astros use their playoff experience to get into the ALCS, and then the Yankees over Astros.
I'm with you. The one thing that could beat the Yankees is a strong pitching staff. But now that the Rays lost Morton and Snell, their bullpen's still great, but they don't have those great starters anymore. So it's tough to find a team once they get to the playoffs that would beat the Yankees. Again, the probably best shot of beating them would be that first round in that little 3-game set, because if you just happen to knock around Garrett Cole in game 1, you're up 1-0, the Yankees out, ace is out, and then maybe you just have a chance to win one of the next 2 games. And in baseball, that's more than doable. If it's an 8 game. Right.
Eight teams. Excuse me, 8 team.
8
but
teams.
Assuming it's 5,
then
I don't think the Yankees lose a 5-game set to a
tough
wild card team, and then you just go from there.
It's tough. Yeah. Moving over to the NL now.
Sorry to cut you off. That's what was throwing me off. I'm like, I'm going between 5 teams and 8 teams. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, so it would be the Blue Jays and the Twins versus the Astros. Wait a minute, no, that's in an 8 team. In a 5 team, it would be the Yankees. They gotta make up their minds so we can totally be clear on this. But assuming it's 5 team,
5 wild card teams is too. For whatever reason, I thought it was 4 division winners and 4 wild cards. Obviously, I know there are 6 divisions in baseball, 3 on each side. But you kept telling me you need 1 more wild card, and I'm like, do I? Oh, I do. That's only 7. So there we go. NL, Joe. I don't think there's going to be much disagreement in the NL West and the Central to win the divisions, and the Dodgers and the Cardinals. Correct. The NL East is the real debate. And if there's an expanded wild card, all those 4 teams in the hunt, Braves, Phillies, Mets, Nats, all make the playoffs for me. If it's just your standard format, the 3 division winners and the 2 wild cards, that's where it gets interesting. The division winner for me in the NL East is the Braves. I bring up Grant Paulson again. We had him on last week. He talks about how much he likes the Braves and how he thinks they're flying under the radar. And I agree with them. They got a young pitching staff that really doesn't have big names, but they got a lot of good arms. And then they got Ozuna back, which I think was huge for the middle of that lineup. Acuna leading off, Freeman batting second. Now you can slide Ozuna right back in that 3-hole. A lot of good young hitters, Ozzy Albies, Johan Camargo. The Braves are stacked. And then, man, in the wild card, definitely San Diego for sure. Wouldn't surprise me if they won the NL West. The Dodgers just are so loaded and have just figured out, much like the Washington Capitals, just how to navigate the regular season all these years. So it's tough for me to put the Padres to win the division, but they will make the playoffs. And then that second wild card spot is tough. It's really, really tough. But I think it'll be the Nationals. I love what they did this offseason. I really did. I thought the Schwarber pickup was great. I thought the Josh Bell pickup was great. Bringing Brad Hand in was great. Soto's now not battling COVID and in and out of the lineup. Guys are healthy. And because the Mets are getting so much attention, I think people are forgetting about the Nationals a little bit. On paper, the Mets might very well be the best team in this division. But with their history of injuries and these new pieces that they're bringing in, I have to see it first. I can't pick them yet to make it. So the Nationals would be my second wild card team if it's a standard format. If it goes to the 8 teams, like I mentioned, it would be them, the Mets, the Phillies, and then the Brewers would be my final team to make the playoffs.
So in a 5-team postseason, I'll just give you my pecking order here before I get into the teams. Dodgers are 1, got the Mets 2, Cardinals 3, Padres 4, Braves 5. That's my rundown. I'm pessimistic about my teams, and it's going to sound homer to pick the Mets here. But when you think about adding pieces in and teams meshing and proving themselves, in baseball, I think it's different than in other sports because for baseball being a team sport, it's also very individualistic, where when player A that you insert into your team is up at the plate, there's nobody else there. It's different than like that Eagles team that was supposed to be the dream team, right? They never clicked. They just never clicked with Vic, Deshaun Jackson, all those guys. You don't need to really click like that in baseball because it's a team sport, but it's individualistic. When the ball's hit the shortstop, the left fielder, center fielder, right fielder don't have any impact on whether Francisco Lindor makes a play. When Lindor's up at the plate, the 8 hitter has nothing to do with whether he gets a triple. It's individualistic, even though it's a team sport. So I don't worry about the meshing. Besides that, it's not like they added a totally new roster. They took McCann and plopped him in. They took Lindor and plopped him in. When you look at this team, it's flipped from past years. In the past, it was, can the offense back up the elite pitching? Now it's, can the pitching catch up to the offense? Now, Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher on the planet, and he's the easy pick to win Cy Young again. And he is my pick to win Cy Young again as we get into the awards. Beyond that, you've got Cookie Carrasco, who is overlooked in this team. Everybody's talking about can Syndergaard come back? They re-signed Stroman. Carrasco from 2014 to 2018, before he had cancer and beat it, he was a top-end number 2 starter. 2017, he was 4th in the AL Cy Young voting with the Indians. 2019, he struggled. His ERA was like 5-something after he came back from cancer. But in 2020, he showed that he returned to form. His ERA was in the high 2s. So I think you got a top-end 2 who is right behind DeGrom right there. Stroman's your 3. What version of him do you get? Are we talking the guy who has been a borderline ace? Are we talking the guy who had that one really bad year where he was a 3 at best? Well, he's penciled in as your 3. So even if he gives you that 3rd starter performance, he is your 3rd starter. Then you got Taijuan Walker as a wild card who they picked up. His whip is higher than you like. Strikeouts per 9 is like in the 8s.
Where's
so he's your number. I'm getting there. He's your number 4. You take what you can get. And then you got David Peterson, who's shined as a rookie, and Joey Lucchesi, who they brought in as well to figure out your number 5 starter. They've got all that, and then they're going to put Syndergaard into the mix wherever they feel he can be as far as his innings and whatnot. So the pitching is better than I think it's been perceived. There's been a lot of talk about it's all the offense, no pitching this year. I think the pitching ends up better than people are perceiving it because of Carrasco. That was overlooked in the Lindor trade, but getting him was huge as well. Now your lineup, outside of the Dodgers, find me a better lineup than Nimmo, McNeil, Lindor, Alonso, Conforto, Smith, Davis, and McCann. And then you got good pickups like Kevin Pillar, Albert Almora, and your guy from the O's, Jonathan Villar, coming off the bench. So they're deep. The bullpen has been the other Achilles heel in the past, but Diaz finally looked like the Diaz they were trading for from the Mariners last year. And my theory kind of proved to be true last year as far as those relievers, where anybody who was way overworked, like Kenley Jansen, Edwin Diaz back in 2018, really struggled in 2019, and they all rebounded in 2020. So we'll see if they continue back to form. But, I mean, you go beyond that. Seth Lugo was elite last year. They picked up Trevor May in free agency. They got Familia, Dellin Betances. Aaron Loop was a really good under-the-radar signing from the Rays from the postseason he had. So for all the talk about what could this team be? Is it all hype? The pieces are there, and I do think they put it together. Probably coming around mid-90s in wins. The Braves are probably right on their heels. Wouldn't surprise me if the Braves win. It's a Braves-Mets race for me. You and I, for the second year in a row, are in total disagreement on the Nationals. Last year, you thought in the shortened season, it really favored them. I had them missing an 18 playoff, and they did. This time around, too, I was not really blown away by their offseason moves. I think the team has more holes than people realize. I think that, relying on Strasburg and Corbin to get back to their elite forms, that's something tough to hang your hat on. I think they probably missed playoffs again. If it's a 5-team playoff, if it's an 8-team playoff, they get in. I had them 4th in the division because I think actually this is the year that the Phillies finally put things together. So I've got this division pegged as Mets, Braves, Phillies, Nats. But like you, if it's an 8-team playoff, all 4 of those teams get in. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the NL East. And, from there, like you said, there's not much to be said about the other divisions.
Who would be your last team, your last wild card team?
Out of those 4?
You would you have the Padres and then the 3 NL East.
I was just going to say, yep, I've got the Padres, the 3 NL East teams. If it were an 8-team playoff, that's it. Or no, I'm sorry, do what you did. This MLB's got to figure it out.
I'm telling you, the 5 wild cards and the 3 divisions. So trippy.
It's too much. It's too much. But outside of that, I was going to get to this. I like the Cubs. The NL West, it's the Dodgers and the Padres. For all the reasons you said, the Dodgers are 1, the Padres are 2. The NL Central, Pirates are going to be a historically bad team. They had the lowest ever win total set by Vegas in the history of baseball. The Reds are due for a pullback. Last year, they were a trendy pick in a shortened sprint of a season, but they've already talked about trading Castillo too, and I think they're going to blow that up before they back it up with another good season. Cardinals are the clear-cut favorite. They're winning the division. Then it's the Cubs and the Brewers. That's the real battle in this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Cubs, another one of those teams that because they were so poor in the shortened season last year, are way better than people realize. That lineup still has Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo. They added Jock Peterson. They got Wilson Contreras behind the plate. The issue for them is pitching, but I really trust David Ross pulling the strings on this team to get them into second place. And I think with that, they would get the last wild card spot if there were 8. And again, in a 5 playoff team season, which I think it will be, we're not having any conversations about these teams that we've spent time on because they're not even close to the clear-cut 4 and 5, which are the whoever doesn't win the NL East, be it the Braves or the Mets, and the Padres. Those are clear-cut 4 and 5s. And I'll actually go as far as saying the same thing that I said for the AL. Both wildcard teams will have more wins than the 3rd best division winner being the Cardinals. I think the Braves and the Braves and or Mets and the Padres will both have more wins than the Cardinals.
They could. I mean, the Cardinals play the Pirates and the Reds a lot, so they could get a good amount of wins. That'll help. All right, going to seasonal awards now. We got MVPs, Cy Youngs, and managerial awards. AL MVP, Joe, why make this hard? Mike Trout. Yeah. Look, the guy's plus 200 to win the AL MVP over 162 games. The next closest guy is plus 1,100, which is Bregman. It's insane.
Until Mike Trout drops off or retires, picking against him to win MVP is just not worth it.
I don't.
You got to go with him.
Plus 200 is just it's dumb. NL MVP is a lot better argument. Bellinger right now is the leader in the clubhouse with Acuna, I believe, last time I saw. But I'm going with Soto as my NL MVP. I like the Nats again. When Tatis got paid, everybody's talking about what's Soto going to make. And his contract's starting to come up, and he's already going to make a lot of money. But I think he wants to just absolutely break the bank. And hitting in the middle of that lineup, if the guy stays healthy, he is just so good. So I like Soto to win NL MVP.
I think this is going to be a year where the hype around Fernando Tatis is so overwhelming that even if his numbers are slightly down from a Soto or from an Acuna, just the kind of mob mentality, for lack of a better way to put it, around Tatis puts him over the edge. I will go with Tatis for that reason. But I mean, besides that, he is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think he will play with just an entirely new level of swagger because of the contract. So I will go with Tatis. This race, for as easy as the AL race is to pick, this race is stacked. And
Yes.
this just goes to show you why the NL is way better than the AL this year. All these names: Soto, Betts, Tatis, Acuna, Bellinger, Arenado, Lindor, Freeman, even with the Braves, Yelich with the Brewers. Would any of those guys surprise you to win MVP? None of them. And that doesn't even mention Machado and Bryce Harper. The NL has ridiculous star power, and you got to imagine that it's going to come from whoever is one of the division winners. And that's why I think that I am going out on a limb with Tatis, even though he has the hype, because I don't think they're going to win the division. And it's always tough to give the MVP, I guess, to a guy who's on a wild card team, even though in the AL we see Trout get it every year. That's just because Trout's on a different transcendent level.
Yeah.
But that's why I think, even though there's so much hype around him, I am kind of going out on a limb saying Tatis. But it's anyone's guess in the NL.
I still can't believe Trout's plus 200. And
Yeah.
like, you'd be dumb not to bet it. AL Cy Young, this was a good race too.
I'm going
for
chalk
me.
for both Cy Youngs. There's
Okay.
without even thinking about it.
I'm not going chalk. For the AL Cy Young, I'm going Glasnow from the Rays because Snell and Morton left. I just think because he's the clear-cut number one.
I can't trust anybody on the Rays, though, because Kevin Cash is coming in to take him out at every fifth or sixth inning.
But that's the thing, though, is because Snell and Morton are gone, I think they give Tyler a longer leash and use that great bullpen
I don't think so,
to back
because
up other guys.
If last year was any indication, it was a shorter season, and you would have thought, like some teams did, they would ride their aces more, like the Yankees with Cole and whatnot. You think they'd ride their aces more because they're pitching fewer games. So there's that aspect of it. And then you're in the World Series and Snell is dealing and you yank him. So in a year where you would have thought teams would give their pitchers longer leashes, and you would have thought in the World Series, or, that he would go ahead and give Snell that longer leash, he doesn't. They go totally by the book, by the numbers. That's why I don't think just because those guys are gone, anything's changing here.
I think it plays into it a little bit. And of those three, Glasnow is definitely the one with the longest leash.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. Lucas Giolito is actually a trendy pick, and he's part of the reason why the White Sox are a popular pick. I'm going chalk with Garrett Cole. He doesn't have a Cy Young yet, and I think he was snubbed of it 2 years ago when they gave it to Verlander, and that was repayment for the previous year when Verlander got snubbed. So they snubbed Cole to correct the Verlander snub. So as long as it's close this year, I think they correct the Cole snub by giving it to Cole. I think he's the best one of those guys anyway, but like I said, it's close. They gave it to him. And then in the NL, it's kind of like Trout at this point for the AL MVP. If you pick against Jacob deGrom, you're just trying to be trendy. He until the last 2 or 3 weeks of last season, he was the favorite. He had a couple bad starts at the end, and bad by his standards, not bad by actual MLB standards. And Bauer lit it up down the stretch for the Reds. So in a year where Bauer is also going to kind of get lost in the shuffle of that Dodgers rotation because he has so much around him, I definitely think deGrom is the clear-cut favorite. Chalk, New York
pick two.
Sweep of the Cy Youngs.
Yep, deGrom is my pick two to win NL Cy Young. And then the manager awards were tricky. In the AL, I went Charlie Montoyo from the Blue Jays. I like Toronto a lot this year. The White Sox made the wild card, and Renteria won it last year. I think the Blue Jays make the wild card, and Montoyo wins it. And then NL manager, I'm going Davey Martinez. He's got a World Series, so it's probably tough, and he needs to really have a good season. I think the Nats need to win the division for him to win the manager of the year, but I'm just looking around the rest of baseball, and, they wouldn't give it to Snedeker in Atlanta if they win the division. They won't give it to Schilt in St. Louis. They won't give it to Roberts in LA. So it almost was by default, like, what team would have a good year would you give it to? Girardi in Philly was another option, but I'll go with Davey Martinez.
So going by my picks to be division winners and wild cards, If the Mets win the division, I think Rojas absolutely has to be in the conversation. I see. My problem with this award is so many times it should go to a team's manager who's not in the playoffs,
I
and
agree.
we never see that happen.
Right.
That's why it's always tough to pick this one. I, I love David Ross. I think if he gets this Cubs team in the mid 80s and wins, he's in the conversation. Or, even if they get to 90, like if this team gets to 90 wins, but because of the Padres and Braves missed out on a wild card, David Ross should be your manager of the year. But that's not how it works. I hate that we're agreeing so much on things here.
Oh, wow. You like Davey too?
No, I another one. I do like Davey, but again, I don't see them giving him the award unless they make the playoffs. I don't have them making the playoffs. So in the same way that you went with Davey by default in your mind, I'm going with Rojas and the Mets by default in my mind because I don't see it going. Same thing to occur with the Braves. I don't see it going to Roberts. The other one that came to mind was Tingler with the Padres, but I feel like the perception is, and it's not a perception, it's a reality. The Padres are a way more talented team on paper than the Mets are.
Yeah.
So if it's between those two guys, I see it going to the guy who has the perceived less talented team. So that's what I'm going with.
If the Padres win the division, win the West, then Tingler absolutely could get it.
Oh, yeah.
If they go to the wild card, though, and the Mets win the division, I think they would give it to.
Agreed on the AL, by the way, with the Blue Jays. I mean, Montoya's got to be the guy. I mean, if they make the wild card, that's got to be the guy. I have a 2-year streak of the AL Manager of the Year.
Really?
So I'll see if I can keep that going. I do.
Very nice. All right, well, so that was our baseball preview. Before we get into college basketball, March Madness, just real quick, NBA, they're playing the All-Star game this weekend, which means they got the skills competitions going on. 3-point shootout, very good list this year. Devin Booker, Jaylen Brown, Steph Curry, Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum. I mean, those guys are all all-star caliber players. I mean, the 3-point shootout's so tough because obviously it's the rack and the time. I'm going with Steph Curry. The best shooter doesn't always win it, but Steph is just, I mean, he necessarily doesn't practice the 3-point shootout, but he does everything from like the tunnel shots and the deep shot. I just feel like, and he's done it. He's done this before. Did he win? I think he did win.
And then Klay Thompson won with a higher score. So he has the motivation to now beat Klay. And
right.
That whole aspect of it.
So I would go Steph. My sneaky pick would be Zach LaVine. I think he could be interesting and
he's not
has
my
a chance.
Sneaky pick. He's my pick.
Really?
Zach LaVine's my pick because I've gotten to watch a few Bulls games this year from covering the Wizards and doing graphics for those games. He's a very streaky shooter.
He is.
If he's on, he's got a shot at this. And I'm partly picking him more for the history aspect of it. No player has ever won the dunk contest and 3-point contest. He could be the first to ever do it. So I'm going with LaVine.
There you go.
For the 3-point shootout.
It's a good nugget. Look, skills competition is an
it's
absolute
always the one. Look, this one is
shit.
always slept on, and I love it every single year because you get the bigs versus the little guys, and I just love the way it's structured with passing it through the hoop, with the 3-point shot, with the free throw, with the speed dribble. I love every aspect of it.
Can I tell you, Luka and Julius Randle are going to be the top 2 picks, but my pick is actually going to be Sabonis, one of the most skilled big men in the NBA. And I think he's going to win this thing. It's a total crapshoot. I'm not going to put money on it, but that would be my pick.
Every year, this comes down to who can come up and hit that pull-up 3.
Yes.
I'm going with Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul, the last few years, there's almost kind of been like a Chris Paul renaissance where people forgot how elite he was when he was with New Orleans back in the day. And then he went to LA, was elite, but because they never achieved what they were supposed to in the playoffs, people forgot about him. And you see what he did last year, and you see what he's doing this year in elevating a team that probably is punching above their weight. I mean, the Thunder should not have made the playoffs last year. Look what Chris Paul did. Right. This Suns team, it's a good team, but it's probably not as good as they actually are. So I think this is a chance for him to just kind of remind people like, yeah, I'm still me, and go ahead and win this thing against some of the best young stars and some of the most talked about with Doncic and Randall. So I'm going to go with Chris Paul.
Suns are a 2 seed right now in the West. They beat the
Crazy.
Lakers. It really is crazy. And then the slam dunk contest is the last one. Anthony Simons, Cassius Stanley, Obi Toppin. Joe, I forgot he was in the league, so I'm going with Cassius Stanley because I mean,
Why not?
you got a
I'm going with
33%
We've
chance.
seen
So.
we've seen what Obi Toppin's done with those in-game dunks
Yes.
at Dayton last year. I'm going with Obi Toppin, and again, the dunk contest. The dunk contest is another one that's a total crapshoot because of the parameters where it's like you only got a certain amount of time or attempts. So even if somebody has the most creative, great idea, if they can't pull it off, they're screwed. And over the last few years, how many times have you seen it where someone's got this great dunk idea, and just because they don't get it, they end up losing, and somebody else who has some like milquetoast run-of-the-mill dunk wins it. So
that's part of it too. But in the other two, in the 3-point and the skills, you control what you do. In the slam, so a judge could give you a 9 when you deserve a 10, and you can lose.
Exactly.
So.
How many times have you seen someone Dwayne Wade's infamous for it, where he holds up an 8 when it's totally a 10? So, I mean, the dunk contest has gotten a little stale lately because people are running out of ideas. I wish they would liven it up, not this year because obviously protocols, but in the future, get like a person who's just a straight up YouTube professional dunker and like have them get in it, kind of like pros versus Joes sort of thing. But I got to go with Obi. It's always a fun weekend.
My favorite NBA competition is the one where they bring in a current NBA player from that city's team, a WNBA player, and a former legend. And they do like a layup, a free throw, a wing jumper, a 3-pointer, and a half-court shot. I love that. And they did it like a couple of years, and they stopped doing it.
The old guy always gets the half-court shot. Never fails. The legend always hits the half-court shot.
All right, Joe. College hoops talk before we get into trivia. And things are heating up. Selection Sunday is, let's see, today's a Thursday, so we got 9 days until Selection Sunday. It's just fantastic. Let's see. We got on the bubble. Man, so Michigan State. Well, it was a huge win for Georgia Tech against Duke. Duke, all this talk, they had that win streak, and then they go into Louisville, and then they lose against Louisville, and then they lose to Georgia Tech. And Duke, well, they have to beat Carolina in their season finale, but then I think they have to do a little bit of work in the ACC tournament too. It's just crazy. All these blue bloods that are obviously on the bubble, which we've talked about. Michigan State had a huge win over Indiana. They're in a good spot because they're playing Michigan, and if they just win one of those games, they're in. If they lose,
I was just saying,
Michigan will hurt them.
Exactly. Michigan's regarded so highly that if they lose both games, it doesn't hurt them. They're not going to get penalized for losing 2 games against a number 2 team, Michigan. So at this point, I'm trying not to get bogged down too much in the bubble yet, just because.
There's still so much that could happen. The mid-major teams, the favorites to lose.
I was going to get to that. I was just going to get to that. The mid-majors this year, between Drake and Loyola Chicago, we got to see who wins that, because if Loyola Chicago, if Drake's right now a last 4-in team. If Drake goes ahead and wins it, Loyola Chicago is a bid stealer. If Loyola Chicago wins it, then Drake might fall out.
I think Loyola's, if they play in the final, in the Missouri Valley final, I think if Loyola loses, they're in.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. Loyola's in, period. If Drake goes on and wins it, one bid is stolen because Loyola Chicago is getting an at-large.
Right.
Loyola Chicago wins, Drake is they're going to give up their spot. They're sweating. And then in the A-10, same thing. A-10 is like that with Richmond, especially, and VCU. So there's so many of those. I'm trying not to get bogged down in it. But if I had to pose this question to you, you pull up Lenardi's.
Yep, looking at it right now.
The last 4 buys, I think for the most part, are in a good spot. Louisville, Rutgers, Georgia Tech, VCU. So of the last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out that he currently has, from those 12 teams, if right now you had to pick 4 of those to get in, who would be your 4? And this is projecting how they finish here. This is taking into account how you think they're going to do over the next couple of weeks. Fast forward to Selection Sunday. Which of those four of those 12 teams do you think get in?
So of those 16, essentially, which 4 do I like?
I'm taking the last 4 buys. I'm kind of taking out right now.
Right.
Of those 12, who do you think get to the last 4 in?
Okay. Michigan State's in. Xavier, I think, is out. Boise, I think, will be out. Seton Hall, I think, will be out. Um, Man, Duke, I think will be out. I think they lose to Carolina. Syracuse to me is the real interesting one because Lenardi obviously jokes about how bad he is at projecting them. And they had a nice win over Clemson yesterday. I don't know what their remaining. Don't they play Louisville left? Do they have one more like tournament caliber team? I don't know if they do. They'll obviously have to win out regardless of who they play and do some work in the ACC tourney.
Syracuse is done. Syracuse actually, that was their last
Oh,
game.
okay, okay, yeah. So
So it's on
Syracuse
to
will
the
have to,
tourney.
but I do. I actually I like Syracuse. I think they get in. So for me, it would be Drake, Michigan State, Syracuse, and boy, that Mountain West Conference tournament's going to be great with Colorado State, Utah State, Boise, and San Diego State. I'll go Utah State. They lost Sam Merrill, and he was their best player last year, but they got Kada, who's like a big 7-foot dude. Boise just lost a tough one to Fresno the other night, and that really hurts them. So Utah State, I'll go Utah State, Syracuse, Drake, and Michigan State. St. Louis was another one in the A10, but the A10 is just, I mean, they're killing themselves. St. Bonaventure just lost at home to Dayton the other night. VCU's just in right now, those would be my four are Syracuse, Drake, Michigan State, and Utah State.
I definitely think Michigan State's in. I do think Drake could fall out because I do think Loyola Chicago wins that tournament. And we've seen it in the past, most notably the year that Syracuse made the Final Four when they got in on their name alone over a Monmouth team that was more deserving. So if Drake doesn't win, I don't think Drake gets in. So pulling Drake out, Michigan State's in. I think Xavier falls out.
Yep.
From the teams that are on the outside looking in, I don't think Duke and Cuse get in because it seems very likely they match up against each other in the
Correct.
ACC tournament. I hate this. I really hate this. But I think Duke gets in because I think they beat Carolina this weekend.
Oh,
And
I hope not.
I think they beat Syracuse in the tournament because again they're matched up, and that avenges the loss. They lose to Syracuse earlier this year.
I believe they beat Syracuse.
No, they did beat Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
They did. You're right. So they go ahead and they pair that up with another win over Syracuse. So right there, if you got them on the first four out right now, like Lenardi does, they go ahead and beat UNC. They go ahead and beat Syracuse. That already puts them in a good spot. If they go ahead and win another game in the tournament, and that pretty much solidifies it. So I do think Duke gets in. I like Memphis actually as a sneaky team on that next four out right now. I think they'll have some opportunities to go ahead and take a step. They play Houston this weekend. I don't know that Houston loses that game, but a strong showing from Memphis. And if they do go on to win, that goes ahead and puts them in. So it's tough. And then I think I like Boise State to kind of stay right there. So those would be my four: Michigan State, Duke, Memphis, and then Boise State as my last four in.
And then really the last big thing would be the battle for the number one seed. After Baylor beat West Virginia, they're in. Even with Michigan's loss to Illinois, they're still in, unless they lose both to Michigan State.
None of my opinions have changed so far in the shakeups we've had in the last week with Baylor barely beating Iowa State and then losing a game to Kansas. With Michigan laying an egg against Illinois. Gonzaga's, by the way, the one seed. There's no questions at all there.
Yes.
But my perception of those teams have not changed. For all we've talked about this year with COVID pauses and how teams reacted to it, Coach Drew for Baylor talked about it. He said, Superman's got his kryptonite. Ours was that COVID pause because our guys are dead right now. And they were dead tired in that Iowa State game. They were dead tired in that Kansas game. And I saw a lot out of them that I needed to see in that West Virginia game. Hard fought second half, went to overtime, and they pulled it out. So I think they're back on track. So I still have it personally as, and again, not for seeding purposes, Gonzaga is going to be the one seed. I personally rank them Baylor, Gonzaga, Michigan. Those are still the three top teams. I mean, it's hard to kind of go beyond there because now you're talking Illinois, Ohio State, Alabama, Houston. It kind of gets muddled there. Big thing, Gillespie got hurt for Villanova last night. You hope his MRI is okay, left with a knee injury.
Awful.
So you don't know how that impacts things. But those three teams, clear cut above everybody else, those three teams. So it's just a battle for the rest of it.
Yeah, and Illinois plays Ohio State on Saturday. So if Illinois wins that game, they're the fourth number one seed. If they lose, then I'm interested to see what Lenardi does. I think he would keep Illinois there for the moment, but I think he would put Ohio State at the number 1, 2 seed, jump Alabama, and then he would see what happens in the Big Ten tournament. Because that Illinois win without DeSumo, the way they beat Michigan, that just carries so much weight. The fact that they won at Michigan, Ohio State lost to Michigan, Illinois is looking good. So I still think they can afford to lose the Ohio State game. They could stay the number 1 team. And then really, as long as they don't have an early exit in the Big Ten tournament, I think the 4 number 1 seeds that are projected right now pretty much stays
I can see
true.
that. Now, the big team that I wanted to hit on here before we get into our preview of this weekend's schedule, Oklahoma State. They made the biggest jump this past week from the 8-9 line to now, I believe they got all the way up to the 4 line, if I want to say.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
4 Joe, line. Look who they're projected to play.
Belmont.
Oh, yep. You know that's
your
upset
favorite
city.
Team.
I love
That's
Belmont.
Your favorite team. That's
I
your
love
favorite
them.
team.
I just love them.
I think Oklahoma State is a really interesting team to watch here because think of the past top picks who we've seen on less than stellar programs. Mm-hmm. Ben Simmons, LSU, they didn't do anything. You saw, why am I blanking on his name? Oh my goodness. The math kid who went to Wisconsin, to Washington. Markelle Fultz, thank you. And Washington wasn't any good. And you've seen that. This is different. Cunningham is doing what he's supposed to do. He's putting the team on his back. He's scoring 35, 40 a night. Last week, they were unranked. They beat Oklahoma. Then they followed up with another win against Oklahoma just a few days later. They're legit, and they have better pieces around them than people realize. And they're a lot better coached than people realize. I think people are sleeping on this team. I think they probably come in around a 4 or 5, and they're a team that could very well upset a 1, depending on who that 1 is, especially if they end up getting in that 4th region where they're in with either Illinois or Ohio State or something like that. I'm really curious to see how they look, especially in the Big 12 tournament. Could they get another shot at Baylor? What will they do with it?
They play them tonight.
Oh, that is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Completely
so we'll find out a lot about Oak State tonight. The Oak State, they're rolling right now. But for me, the Big Ten, it's kind of like, it seems like they've had a team at each point in the season that has gone through a stretch like this. Oklahoma had a stretch where they beat 3 straight top 10 teams. Texas was great to start the year. West Virginia's been great as of late. So Oklahoma State's been great. But, I mean, the Big Ten, they have 10 teams in their league. 7 of the teams have been in the top 20. So you pull together 2 or 3 wins in a row, and you're going to jump a lot of people. And that's what Oak State's been doing. Cade's phenomenal. They've been doing this, too, without Isaiah Likely, who's their second best player. So that's even more impressive. For me, I worry again, and I've been telling you this about Illinois and Iowa. I just worry about teams, even players as good as Cade and Garza and DeSumo. I just worry that come March Madness, these conference tournaments, when you have a player that's so high profiled and so well known, I just worry that if a team gets in trouble or if they're going through a little slump, if they just rely on that player too much. And because of Cade's greatness and because of how well they're playing, I just wonder if Oklahoma State is maybe just they're kind of peaking a little too high right now, but they're rolling. They're going to get a great test tonight at Baylor. Baylor's favored by 12, which seems a little stinky. I know they're at home, but I mean, 12 is a lot of points.
A lot.
So.
Yeah, I was looking at that today, and I read it as Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State. So
and Oklahoma plays Texas. So that's another great game. Look, the Big 12 and the Big 10, just about every night you're going to have ranked games. So yeah, that is definitely the game of the night. And we're going to find a lot about Oklahoma State. They don't even need to win. If they can lose and it's close, then that will show people a lot for sure.
And now looking ahead to the weekend, then, as we have been the last few weeks, ever since football best bets left us, we're not doing best bets for college basketball, but we're looking ahead to the games that we're really circling on the calendar.
Yep.
I have picked a couple of times in a row now the Villanova road game, and they've been upset both times. Not doing it this time. I don't think Providence has that capability, but the same team we're mentioning, the same conference that we're talking about, Oklahoma State, after this Baylor game, they go at West Virginia, 2 p.m. on Saturday. That's my game of the day on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean that and Illinois and Ohio State are definitely the two games that jump out. Those are definitely the two games to watch. Um, as I roll through the slate, I mean Saturday there really isn't much that jumps out. Again, this time of the year, a lot of those mid-major
Those two
teams
games, those
are
are the
in
ones.
their Duke Carolina is another one, and it's not because they're ranked; it's because they're both battling to get into the tournament. So that's a huge game. I guess the other one maybe would be Indiana and Purdue if Indiana has any shot at getting in.
Purdue has
Uh,
been slept on all season long. They've been around the top 25 all year long. They're a very tough team. Matt Painter's a really solid coach.
yeah,
They're a team that I want to watch in March, kind of make that last kick of a run, maybe win a game that you don't expect them to win in the Big Ten tournament, probably go a little bit further than you expect them to in the tournament itself. I mean, again, it's a team that with all the different top teams in the Big Ten this year, and with all the teams beneath them that have gotten buzz, like Maryland, they've kind of just gotten lost in the shuffle. Now Michigan State, obviously getting all the buzz that they're getting. People keep forgetting about Purdue, and they're one of those lunch pail teams, as cliche as it is. They get their lunch pail, they go to work, they beat you down. Right now, they're in that second region. First round matchup against Winthrop, second round matchup against Oklahoma or Western Kentucky. I think they're through that little part of the bracket. I think they're through to the Sweet 16, and then they would have a matchup with Baylor, which they would certainly lose, in my opinion. But they're a team that they're going to be one of those teams. We get to that second weekend, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't realize they were that good this year. Let's see what they can do." So I really am curious to see what they can do. And tonight against Indiana, that rivalry that they've got in state, it's another chance for them to just kind of keep adding to their resume.
yeah, Matt Painter really is maybe the most overlooked coach in the country. All his teams do is win. All they do is make the tournament. And the only thing with Purdue is they don't have that Carson Edwards
Yeah,
guard that I think that can carry him. He's always got great big men. He's always got good wing defenders. But Edwards was just so special. And I mean, they should have
of
gotten to the
course.
Final Four. They were
Yeah,
so close.
of course. And then
Sunday, too, has a good little slate. Wisconsin's lost 7 straight games against ranked opponents, so they can get a good one against Iowa on Sunday. You mentioned the Houston-Memphis game. That could be a monster win for
I,
Memphis.
I I'm leaning towards Memphis in that game. The more I'm thinking about it, I think Memphis is going to come out and get that win. We've seen Houston a couple times this year just look disinterested in games. They've won some of those games they've looked disinterested in, but I'm not buying the Houston hype entirely. I need Grimes to come through with a massive day for me in fantasy college basketball on Sunday. But I think Memphis, this is the game. I was just going to get to that now that we move on to Sunday. This is the game I'm looking at this week, like I have the past couple of weeks when I've picked against Villanova on the weekend to get upset. This is the one I'm looking at. And the other game, Texas Tech against Baylor. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, at least among us, we kind of look at them the same way. Like, what can they be in March? We like them. Do we love them, though? And they both play back-to-back against Baylor. So huge measuring stick games for Oklahoma State tonight and Texas Tech on Sunday. And it's another good chance to see Baylor, too, if they've got their legs beneath them once again. Again, they showed it in that West Virginia game, especially with it going to overtime. But we've got 2 more great chances to see it against Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. 3 games in a few days for them. So
Real
really
quick,
want to see what
are
they do.
you more excited for the Big Ten or the Big 12 tournament?
I'm going to say the Big Ten just because the bottom of the Big Ten is a lot stronger. And we see that with Northwest. I mean, that was a typical Maryland loss last night. But like the teams that we've seen this year, even in the Big Ten at the bottom, they can just turn around and have themselves a day
Nebraska's playing well right
I
now.
was just going to say Nebraska's playing well. They beat Rutgers. Minnesota is the 3rd from the bottom in the conference, and we've seen them be a ranked solid team this year. There's no easy out in the Big Ten. Because of that, I go with the Big Ten tournament. The Big 12 tournament maybe has some more glamour to it, if that's the right word, just because I think right now we're looking at those teams in a different way. Like we know the Big Ten is the Big Ten, but
Sure.
now we're all of a sudden like, oh, West Virginia is something else. Oh, Cade Cunningham, look at the way he's playing. So right now they're that kind of new shiny toy, the Big 12. But let's not forget who by far the best conference is, and it's the Big Ten. So I'm looking more forward to the Big Ten tournament for that reason.
Both tournaments will be great. Again, the first tournament bid handed out will be tomorrow, the Ohio Valley Conference that always gets things going. Come on, Belmont. I'm looking forward to picking you as my 13 seed upset. All right, Joe. Trivia to wrap things up as always. You got one on me last week, so you have taken the lead 16-15. I can give you my question first.
All right.
I think it's a good one. And, I hope you were paying attention while we were talking about the bracket and certain teams and certain conferences, because you're going to need to put that memory to the test. Your question is, so according to Joe Lenardi, there are 11 multi-bid conferences right now, okay? Of those 11 conferences, 5 of those only have just 2 teams in his projected tournament field right now. So you can give me 4 of those 5 conferences that only have 2 bids right now and name the 2 teams in those 4 conferences, 4 of the 5, then I will give it to you.
Wait, hold on. So you want the conferences that have multi-bids,
just multiple bids, but just 2.
Only 2.
So there are 5 leagues that only have 2 teams right now. Just 2.
Okay, I got you.
So give me those 4. Yep. All right, go ahead.
I want to say I know Richmond's been getting a lot of talk in the A10, but I want to say he's got St. Bonaventure and VCU only from the A10.
That is one. The A10, right. Correct. Just those 2.
I would have to imagine that he's only got Loyola Chicago and Drake from that conference.
He does. Have a third? That is correct. Okay. Yes. 4. Right.
Gosh. Pac-12. None of the big conferences only have 2 teams. I don't imagine. No. All the big conferences got to have.
50 seconds left.
So we're talking about Belmont. Could he? He couldn't have. All right, I got strikes to work with, and I got no other leads. Could it be the Ohio Valley? Does he have Morehead State in there?
It is not. It's just Belmont. So 30 seconds left, 1 strike.
All right. I know it's not the Mountain West. They got actually like 3 or 4 teams in. It's not. It's a good question. I like this question.
15 seconds left.
What are some of the other early tournaments? Horizon League's pretty early. They got Cleveland State.
5 seconds.
Horizon.
Nothing. Not the Horizon. So Gonzaga is so good that we forget about the West Coast, but BYU is the other one. BYU is in the West Coast.
I thought they were only a 1 bid. All right.
BYU, and then the American, Houston and Wichita right now. Wichita is an 11 seed. And Joe, I actually screwed up. I made this last night, and then I saw it this morning, and as we're talking about it, and as I'm asking the question, I'm like, wait, there are only 4 leagues. Because at last night, the Mountain West only had San Diego State and Colorado State in. But this morning, Boise became the 3rd team in. So had you have said the Mountain West, I would have given it to you because I screwed up. But yeah, the American and the West Coast were the other.
That's 2. All right. Good question. I like it. For you, I'm going dunk contest. Okay. So we got that coming up this weekend. Thinking back on it, we've had some pretty good ones in the last from 2010 to 2020. Give me 6 of the dunk contest winners.
All right. Blake Griffin, Dwight Howard.
Blake Griffin, yes. Dwight Howard, no. He was 2008, so did not make it in that time frame. So strike 1.
Derek Jones Jr.
Derek Jones Jr. is last year's correct. That's 2.
Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon didn't win it. He got snubbed. He lost to Levine both times. So strike 2.
Well, Levine was going to be my next one.
Yeah, I gave away Levine. I knew you were going to get Levine. So I literally said earlier in the show.
Right. So there was that one stupid year where they had John Wall and Paul George all on the same team.
So but you got 2 strikes. 2 strikes. So 1 strike remaining, and you got about a minute.
I don't know who those other. I mean, the dunk contest can go to anybody. Was Gerald Green too early ago? I think he was. Nate Robinson, or he was
Nate Robinson, 2010. He went back to back in 09 and 10. So you got that one 4. You got to give me 2 more, and you got 30 seconds left.
Yeah,
One strike to work with.
Gerald Green's too early. Ooh, all right. This is probably wrong, but Serge Ibaka.
Not Serge Ibaka. Strike
Okay.
three. So,
was it John Wall or Paul George?
John Wall won 2014. He did.
Yeah.
He did. So it was Nate Robinson in 10. The one that I thought you were going to get, and this is why I picked 6 as the number, I thought you were going to get Nate Robinson. You did. I thought you would get Derek Jones Jr. because it was last year. You did. I thought you'd get John Wall as a Wiz fan. I knew you would get Levine. That's 4. I thought you would get Donovan Mitchell. You didn't get Donovan Mitchell.
I was thinking about him.
I definitely thought you were going to get Blake Griffin, 2011.
I said Blake. I said Blake and Dwight Howard were my 2 off the bat.
Oh, okay. Well, you still got 3 strikes.
But I missed I missed Donovan. Yep. Okay. So who were the other ones?
That was just from bottom, Nate Robinson, Blake Griffin, Jeremy Evans, Terrence Ross, John Wall, Zach Levine, Glenn Robinson III, Donovan Mitchell, Hamidou Diallo, and then Derek Jones Jr.
Oh yeah, Diallo. I totally forgot about. I wouldn't have gotten any of those other guys. Yeah, it was a good question.
That's why I picked 6. I thought Nate, Griffin, Wall, Mitchell, Levine, and Derek Jones Jr.
That was good. Yeah, Mitchell I was thinking about, but I couldn't remember if he was in the dunk. So that's good. He's doing 3-point shootout too, right? So him and Levine.
Oh, that's right. Yep. So 2 guys could do it. 2 guys
could do
it.
Okay. How about that? All right, very good. Well, Joe, episode 40, first episode of March in the books, and next week we'll have some teams that are locked into the tournament. We'll be previewing some conference tournaments. Mm-hmm. It'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll be able to have a guest. Again, it's just this time of the year. You try to get college basketball people.
Like John Rothstein says, everybody right now is like an accountant in tax season. And it is tax season, so get your taxes done.
It is. They don't sleep until May. Not right now. Yep. All right. We'll see you next time.